My name is Megan Riley. I'm 34 single, and for the last 8 years, I've worked as a data systems engineer for a medical device company in Boston. I don't have pets, I don't really take vacations, and I'm the kind of person who reorganizes her kitchen just for fun. I guess you could say I like order, predictability, control, which makes what happened that Thursday morning so much harder to explain even now. I walked into the conference room feeling confident. I'd just wrapped 3 high-profile system upgrades ahead of scheduled trimmed database inefficiencies that saved our team thousands per quarter and mentored 2 junior engineers through their certifications. Everything pointed to a promotion. My boss, Carolyn, had even hinted at big changes coming soon. The conference room was cold. I remember that. The air conditioning was too high, and the light from the projector gave everything a sterile glow. Carolyn sat across from me, tapping her pen against a folder, like she didn't know what to do with her hands. I smiled, trying to read her expression. She didn't smile back, just gestured toward the screen behind her, where the performance dashboard loaded. And there it was. My score, 42 out of 100. I blinked, laughed awkwardly, waiting for her to say there was a mistake, a glitch, something. She didn't. I leaned forward, scanned the metrics. The breakdown showed poor communication, failure to integrate with team goals, and lack of initiative. The words blurred. It didn't make sense. I felt the blood drain from my face as I read. This wasn't just a bad review. It was a professionally crafted execution. I looked at Carolyn again. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Her lips moved like she wanted to speak, but no words came, just that soft pen tapping on the folder. I asked her if this was a joke or someone else's report. I reminded her of the system overhaul I'd led, the client interface I rebuilt that got us 3 new contracts. I asked why none of that showed up. She mumbled something about algorithmic scoring, said the data was pulled from multiple inputs, but even as she said it, her voice cracked. I asked again if this was real. She paused, then stood up so suddenly the chair scraped across the floor. She muttered something about needing to verify a discrepancy and walked out. Just like that, left me sitting there alone with my career unraveling in front of a screen. I stared at the number again. 42. I'd never scored below 80. Not once in my career. And now I was being told I'd become one of the lowest performing employees in the entire department, without warning, without explanation. I felt like I was watching someone else's life fall apart. That's when I knew. Something was wrong. Not with my work, not with the data, with the system. But I didn't realize just how deep the problem went. Not yet. That would come later. Much later. Right now, all I knew was this someone wanted me gone. And they were willing to fake the numbers to make it happen. When Carolyn came back, she didn't sit down. She stood by the door like she might need to leave again at any second. Her eyes flicked to the screen, then to the floor, then back to me. She said the system might have pulled metrics from the wrong time period, that she needed to double-check with HR. Her voice was low, controlled, like someone walking across ice terrified it might crack. I asked her if she believed the score, really believed it. She looked at me for half a second, and that was all I needed. The answer was no, but she wasn't going to say that out loud. I watched her fingers tighten around the folder in her hands. She looked over her shoulder and said she'd be right back. Then she left again. Quieter this time, like she didn't want anyone to notice. The room felt colder than before. The projector hummed behind me, still glowing red with that awful number. I stared at it like it might shift, like maybe if I blinked enough times it would change. It didn't. Something was wrong. Not just the score or the phrasing or the silence. It was her. Carolyn. I'd worked under her for nearly 4 years. We weren't close, but we had a mutual respect. And today, she looked scared, not annoyed, not confused. Scared. I replayed her movements in my mind, the stiffness in her shoulders. The way her eyes darted toward the glass wall was as if someone might be watching. The way she whispered instead of speaking plainly. None of it made sense. 10 minutes passed, then 15. She didn't come back. I stood up, walked slowly around the room, and glanced toward the hallway through the slats of the blinds. Empty. The office was quiet. Too quiet for a Thursday. I'd never noticed how the silence in that place could press in on you like that. I checked the portfolio I'd brought still damp from the condensation of her water glass. My notes were smeared. I hadn't touched them once during the meeting. It hadn't really been a meeting at all. It felt more like a setup. I sat back down and stared at the screen again. Not at the score, but at the way the metrics were arranged. Uniform, precise, too clean, too perfect in their logic, as if someone had engineered them to tell a very specific story. A story where I failed. A story I didn't write. And deep down, I already knew this wasn't about me being bad at my job. This was about someone needing me to disappear. Carolyn returned 17 minutes later. Her face was pale, her movements tight like she was trying not to make a sound. She didn't say anything, just walked over, slipped a piece of paper onto the table and stood back. I looked down. It wasn't part of the official report. No company letterhead, no HR branding. Just a plain white printout with bold black letters at the top, Employee Optimization Plan. Beneath the header was a table clean columns of names and dates and strategies. My name was fourth on the list. I read the line next to it. Target M. Riley. Performance decline scheduled. Tactics reassign project credit, introduce schedule conflicts, and exclude from team meetings. There was a code at the end. Status phase 2. Confidence disruption. I could feel my hands go cold. The words didn't just sting. They made my whole body tense, like my skin didn't quite belong to me anymore. I looked up at Carolyn. Her mouth was pressed into a line. Her eyes were glossy, with something between fear and guilt. She whispered that I needed to leave, that I hadn't seen this, that if I stayed, things would get worse. She didn't explain. She didn't have to. Everything I needed to understand was printed on that single sheet of paper. It wasn't just a bad review, it was a strategy. A calculated process signed, approved, and tracked. I wasn't failing. I was being dismantled. I folded the printout and slipped it into my folder without speaking. I didn't thank her. I couldn't. My legs moved before my brain did. I walked straight out of that room, through the hallway past my coworkers, and toward the elevator, holding the first real proof that I had been targeted all along. At home, I spread the printout across my kitchen table and read every line like it was a confession. Each section laid out precise steps for undermining an employee's performance without ever firing them. It was cold, structured, and terrifying in how ordinary it all looked. Reassign successful projects to others. Cancel meetings, then penalize for being uninformed. Push unrealistic deadlines followed by formal warnings for missed targets. Managers were instructed to ignore wins, exaggerate flaws, and document inconsistencies that didn't exist. It wasn't about poor performance. It was about building a narrative, one designed to break a person down until they resigned on their own. The further I read, the tighter my chest became. The last column held a reason. Mine said escalated safety concern. I remembered the meeting clearly. I'd raised a red flag about a change to the sterilization protocol in our new line of surgical pumps. The data showed an increased risk for contamination. I didn't accuse anyone, I just brought the numbers. That was all it took. I sat there in silence, the overhead light flickering slightly above me. My tea had gone cold. I hadn't even touched it. There was a part of me that still wanted to believe this wasn't real, that someone had made a mistake, and this plan had been scrapped or misfiled or meant for someone else entirely. But I knew better. No one makes charts this detailed unless they plan to use them. No one writes instructions like this unless they've worked before. I wasn't just unlucky. I was a threat. And someone somewhere had decided that removing me quietly was safer than listening to what I had to say. That's when the anger started to take hold. Quiet at first, but steady. The next morning, I woke to an email from Human Resources. The subject line read, "Resignation acknowledged." I stared at the screen for a full minute before I could bring myself to open it. The message thanked me for my verbal resignation and confirmed that my employment had officially ended as of the previous day. It included language about transition support and final paperwork, all written in the past tense. I hadn't resigned. I hadn't even spoken to HR. But now, according to the system, I was gone. Minutes later, a second email arrived. This one came from the senior VP, a man I'd only met twice in passing. He expressed regret over my departure, praised my contributions, and wished me the best in my future endeavors. He also reminded me of the confidentiality agreement I had signed when I was hired. The tone was polite, final, like the closing paragraph in a story I hadn't finished writing. I forwarded both emails to Carolyn. No reply. I texted her asking what was happening, asking if she had said I quit. Hours passed before she answered. Her response was 5 words. "I'm sorry, I can't talk." That afternoon, a courier knocked on my apartment door. He handed me a sealed box with my name on it. Inside were the contents of my desk, my mug, my photos, the little cactus I kept by the window. On top was a severance agreement offering 2 weeks' pay in exchange for waiving all claims against the company. I didn't open it. I just slid it under my bed and sat on the floor for a long time. My phone was silent. My inbox already locked. My access has been revoked. It was like I had never worked there at all. No announcement, no goodbye. Just a quiet rewrite of history that left me erased as if I had simply walked away. On the 3rd day after I'd been erased, there was a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. I hadn't spoken to anyone. I almost didn't answer, but when I looked through the peephole, I saw Lauren from accounting. We weren't friends, not really. We'd shared coffee a few times in the break room, exchanged emails over expense reports. She stood there, holding a grocery bag like she didn't know what to do with her hands. She sat on my couch and didn't touch the tea I offered. Said she'd heard I left. Everyone had. They were saying I'd had some kind of breakdown during my review, that I'd yelled at Carolyn. I stormed out. I told her none of that was true. I told her what happened. I showed her the document. She read every word. Then she said something that made my stomach drop. This wasn't the first one she'd seen. 8 months ago, she said she found expense reports tied to outside consultants with no listed deliverables. Training that never happened. Programs she couldn't match to anything real. They were all processed through a cost center labeled Talent Efficiency Projects. Each time one of those expenses went through, someone left the company. Always the same pattern. Strong performance, a conflict with leadership. Then, poof, gone. She had tracked 22 exits. 22 stories that ended just like mine. And that was only what she could see from the accounting side. As she spoke, something shifted in me. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't going crazy. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't alone. There was a pattern, a machine, and I wasn't its first casualty. Lauren didn't stay long, said she shouldn't be seen here too long. But before she left, she whispered that she might be next. I watched her walk down the hallway and disappear into the elevator. The silence that followed felt different this time, not empty, just full of everything I had to do next. It was just after 4 in the afternoon when I got the message. No name, no greeting, just a time, a location, and 4 words. Northeast Garage, Level 2, alone. I almost didn't go. It felt too much like a trap or a prank or something worse. But something in me needed to see it through. So I parked where the message said and left the engine running. The garage was quiet, dimly lit. My heartbeat was louder than the radio. At 4:06, a silver sedan pulled into the spot 2 cars over. I recognized the driver before he even rolled down his window. Nico from IT. We'd maybe spoken twice in 3 years. He always looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. That day, he looked nervous, but he didn't get out of the car. He lowered the window a few inches, told me to open my back door and lean in like I was grabbing something. I did as he said. No questions, no words. I saw his hand reach across the seats and slide something under my passenger seat. Then he drove away. It was a thumb drive, no label, no note, just black plastic and the weight of what it might contain. I drove straight home and locked the door behind me. I plugged it into an old laptop I hadn't used since grad school. What opened nearly took my breath away. Hundreds of files, internal emails, meeting transcripts, performance review templates with blank fields for false metrics, charts showing timelines for employee eliminations, lists of names, dates, reasons, and results. I scrolled until I found my name. Phase 2. Megan Riley. Cause safety protocol interference. But I wasn't the only one. There were dozens. Names I recognized. Names I didn't. All with the same fate. All documented in exacting detail. It wasn't just a plan. It was a full-blown system. Calculated. Rehearsed. Hidden in plain sight. And now I had the key to expose it. I spent 2 nights combing through every name on the list. Some I remembered from passing conversations. Others from project rosters or old company newsletters. Each had been labeled a problem. Each had been erased. I started reaching out, carefully, quietly. I messaged a few on LinkedIn, just enough to let them know I understood what happened. Most ignored me. Some replied with one sentence. I signed something. I can't talk. But 7 people agreed to meet. We gathered in a quiet back room of a diner near the train station. I brought a folder full of printouts. They brought guarded expressions and tired eyes. The room was small, but it felt big with all the silence we carried in. I went first. I told them about the review, the printout, the emails, and the thumb drive. At first, no one said anything. Then someone nodded. Then another. One by one, the stories came out. Each is different in the details, but the same in shape. Sudden demotion, confusing feedback, strange isolation, a push they couldn't prove until it was too late. By the end of that meeting, we were no longer strangers. We were pieces of the same pattern. Some were angry. Some were scared. All of us were tired of pretending it hadn't happened. We started meeting weekly. We added more people. A former QA lead, a safety analyst, a data architect. By the time we reached 11, we realized we had something real. We had evidence. We had a story. And we had each other. It was Rachel who brought up the summit, a company-sponsored industry event set for the following month. All the executives would be there, media too, investors. It was the perfect stage. We didn't decide anything that night, but the idea stuck. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something stronger than fear. I felt possibility. Maybe we couldn't fix what happened to us, but we could make sure it didn't happen to anyone else. The ballroom was massive, lit with soft gold chandeliers and lined with rows of chairs facing a towering stage. Banners hung from the ceiling, proudly boasting the summit's theme, innovation through integrity. The irony made my stomach churn. By 9:00 a.m., the room buzzed with quiet anticipation. Executives in tailored suits, journalists with press badges, and investors sipping coffee waited for the keynote speaker. My team was already in position, scattered across the room like we didn't know each other. Rachel is near the media table, Blake by the side doors. I stayed close to the back, near the AV booth. At 11:58, I got the signal from Nico. One text. Ready. At exactly noon, the lights dimmed. The HR director took the stage with her signature corporate smile and introduced our chief operations officer. A round of polite applause followed as Weston stepped forward, adjusting his cuffs like he owned the room. He looked relaxed, confident, like a man convinced the room belonged to him. Then the screen behind him flickered. For half a second, it looked like a glitch. The summit logo vanished, replaced by a black slide. Then came the email. Bold white text on the screen, massive enough for even the back row to read. Subject: Strategic Elimination Protocol. From Weston to HR and legal. Notes: Megan Riley has been neutralized. Move forward with the next target. A gasp swept the room. Murmurs followed like thunder rolling through the crowd. Weston froze mid-step, his expression cracking as he turned to face the screen. He motioned toward the tech booth, barking an order, but Nico had locked them out. Slide after slide followed. Internal emails, performance manipulation templates, lists of employees marked for removal including reasons, and scripts for documentation. The truth played out in real time, larger than life. People were on their feet. Phone recording. Journalists typing. Security looks unsure of who to approach. It was too fast, too public, too undeniable. Weston tried to speak, but his mic was cut. The power in the room had shifted. It no longer belonged to him. It belonged to the truth. And for the first time, it was speaking louder than he could. For a moment, no one moved. The screen kept flipping through slide after slide. Weston stood frozen near the podium, jaw-clenched eyes darting toward the exits. Then I stood up. My voice came out steady, louder than I expected. I said my name, Megan Riley. I said I was one of the people on that list. I raised safety concerns and was erased for it. Heads turned. People stared. I kept going. I told them I was pushed out under the guise of performance decline. That's what they were seeing was real. That it happened not just to me, but to many. Then Blake stood. He said his name. Said he lost his job after raising questions about product testing failures. Then Rachel. Then Mina. One by one, we rose from different corners of the room, our voices folding into one story. Some people in the audience looked stunned. Others horrified. A few pulled out their phones and started recording again. And then, as if the moment wasn't already too big to process, the back doors opened. Carolyn walked in, holding a folder clutched to her chest. She looked directly at me. Then she turned to the crowd and said she had been forced to falsify my review, that she had been told her own job was on the line, that she couldn't stay quiet anymore. The silence that followed her words was heavy. No one moved. Until another voice spoke from near the press row. A woman in a gray blazer stepped forward, holding up a badge. Department of Labor. She said she had attended to observe best practices, but now she would be launching an immediate investigation. The room didn't erupt, it just exhaled, like something had been holding its breath for too long. Weston tried to regain control, tried to dismiss us all as disgruntled. But no one was listening. Not anymore. Because in that moment, power had shifted again, from the suits on stage to the voices in the crowd. And none of us were alone anymore. Not for a second. In the weeks that followed the conference, everything unraveled for the people at the top. The press coverage was relentless. Every headline carried our names. Every article exposed just how deep the rot had gone. The board issued a statement first. Then came resignations. One by one, executives stepped down or were removed entirely. HR leadership was replaced. Outside counsel was brought in. For the first time in years, the company was forced to look at itself and admit what it had done. A formal investigation began within days. Subpoenas followed. Documents were collected. The system that had seemed so bulletproof cracked wide open. And beneath it, everything was just as we said. Coordinated, repeated, hidden behind corporate buzzwords and compliance loopholes. We weren't just believed. We were vindicated. Each of us received public apologies and compensation packages. But more importantly, we saw the policies dismantled, the algorithms adjusted. The whistleblower protections were rewritten. I watched as people I had never met stood up because of what we did. Interns, engineers, admin staff. They demanded change too, and this time they were heard. I never went back to the company. I never wanted to, but I didn't walk away empty-handed either. Instead, I started something new. 6 months later, I launched a consultancy focused on corporate ethics and psychological safety in the workplace. We help companies build systems that protect people, not silence them. We speak at conferences, write new policy models, and train managers how to lead without fear. Lauren joined me. So did 3 others from our group. And little by little, the thing that tried to break us became the reason we built something better. There are still moments when I remember how it felt. sitting alone in that conference room, reading those numbers, wondering if I had imagined it all. But those memories don't control me anymore. Because the truth is, change isn't about tearing everything down. It's about choosing to grow something new in the space where damage once lived. I didn't get revenge. I found purpose. And now, when someone tells me they feel erased, I don't just believe them. I hand them a pen. I remind them they're not powerless. And I help them write themselves back into the story.